Alright, so I recently purchased the GX-24 Roland used vinyl cutter, and I was struggling trying to get it to work with the new latest software in VersaWorks and other things. My goal is to print on my BN20 and then move the print, laminate it, and then move the print over to the GX-24 and cut it over there. So that being said, I wanted it all in VersaWorks. It's not working out for me, so I came up with this workaround. I had to download, the GX-24 driver and the CutStudio program that is part of that, the Roland CutStudio, which is software for the vinyl cutter that can be used solely through that, and it's fine. It's just a little outdated as well. But there's also a CutStudio Ai or Adobe Illustrator plugin that I downloaded too. So I have that as well. So the goal is I'm going to do something like this over here on the screen. So we're going to start from scratch. I do want to check one thing. All right, so to start from scratch, we're just going to File, New. And the biggest thing that I have found that you need to make sure that you're doing is setting up your artboard to the proper width. So the width is going to be the width that the printer is going to print. I know that my Roland prints somewhere around the 18.7 inch mark. One of the things that you can do is go to your devices and printers. You can right click on the Roland printer, go to Print Preferences, and in the settings section you can find that by clicking Get Printer Width, and it will tell you that exact number. If you need that, you can do it that way. So my width is going to be the 18.7 inches. My height, it's on a roll, so this really doesn't matter, but I don't want to put a huge file together, so I'm just going to start with 16 inches for this purpose. So I'm going to hit Create. Okay, and there's my little artboard. To make this a little easier, I am just going to steal my graphics from my other project, so I'm going to copy those and I'll bring them over. These are just some leaves that my daughter drew. I'm going to stick them down here on the artboard. And I have used Adobe Illustrator to create my cut lines. And so I'm going to copy those cut lines over as well and just line those back up with my image. Okay, so I have my cut lines and I have my images. Now, one of the big things that you want to do in your layers palette is you need to keep this stuff separate. So we're going to have our cut lines on one layer. So I'm just going to drag and drop those over there. I have my image down here. I can duplicate this and make many of these. For the sake of the video, I'll just do two. And it'll print faster too this way. All right, now when I position them, I'm going to move those cut lines again. Okay, so I have a cut layer and I have my image layer. When I position them, I am leaving space on the left and right side, or left and bottom, okay, because I need to have room for my crop marks. So I'll move those over just a little bit. And I do have a lot of headroom here as well. The headroom is important because wherever the crop mark is, you're going to need 4 inches beyond that so that the machine has enough space on the rollers to roll it back and forth. So you do waste a little bit that way, but you just need to have that extra headroom. So after I have the image created and I'm ready to start the process of adding the crop marks, I'm going to go up to Window and I'm going to go down to Extension and I'm going to go to Roland CutStudio. It brings up my extension over here. The first thing you're going to do is choose the GX-24 and I'm going to come down here to where it says Crop Marks and I'm going to click Crop Marks. And this worked pretty well this time because I've been playing around with this a lot today. However, this may be something that you have to play around with a little bit and to get them to be visible. One of the things that you might need to do to accomplish this is you're going to go up here to the little hamburger menu, those 3 lines, and you're going to right click. You will then, regular click, you're going to then click on Crop Marks, and it tells you that the GX-24 has 3 points, which we see on the screen. And then you want to make sure that your width and length is big enough to accommodate your graphic. So for example here, the length right now is this vertical spacing on the left side. I could bring that down. So let's say even probably 8 inches. And I'm leaving this at 15 because I like to have my crop marks across the bottom edge of my composition. Okay, and I saw this in another video that I did think was really helpful. When you have these settings in your crop mark settings, it's a good idea to just take a screenshot of these settings. I'm going to just copy them, just that little section, and then I'm going to just close that with the OK, and I'll just paste that in onto my document as some notes, so that if I ever made changes to my cut settings, let's say I was working on a different project, I can easily come back and grab these notes. I didn't do that the way I wanted to do it. Edit, undo, edit, undo. But I can easily come back to these notes and check those out, reset them up so that I can come back and cut this properly later on. As you change those things, that program's going to remember those changes, and so if you're not ready to cut this file right away and you're working on multiple things, that may become adjusted. So just by taking a quick screenshot of that, you now have that information so that you can come back to it if you need to at a later date and cut that file. The machine. So I'm going to click OK. It's just going to move that dot back down, and then I need about 4 inches above here, and that's just fine for right now. That looks fine. Now you might say, okay, well, I don't know what that looks like, and I'm just kind of aligning. Oh, the other thing in here is you want to make sure that your X and Y positioning is at least an inch. I have an inch and a quarter right now, but you can go as small as an inch there if you're trying to fit things on. And then you don't want any of your images to be over that kind of space. That is so that you have space for your roller edge on the vinyl cutter to grab the material and pull it through. So I'm going to click OK, and in this situation I'm going to grab this. It looks like I'm a little close here, so I'm going to bring it over out from underneath that, like that. Okay, looking good. So in this layer, essentially this is going to be my print layer, and this is going to be my cut layer. Okay, and so at this point, it doesn't show anything up here on the preview. If I hit update, I still don't have anything. So to see the preview, I just have to highlight those and hit update, and it'll actually show you those cut lines then over here, so you can kind of see what you can expect to have happen. This is a little bit close down here, so I'm going to bring it up a little bit more and hit update again, and I feel a little bit better about that. Okay, so before I actually cut anything though, I need to print out this document. So I'm going to come back here to my main screen, and I'm going to turn off the visibility of my cut lines. I don't want to print those on my object. I just need those to be able to be cut later on. So I just want my crop marks and my image to actually print. So you can print directly from Illustrator. I'm going to go File, Print. And the biggest thing that I found here is we're going to make sure that this preset is custom. The printer is selected here as the Roland BN20. We're in the General tab. Everything is pretty much fine. The biggest thing, though, is it looks like it's cropped and cut funny in this preview. And that's because our media size is not set properly. So we're going to go to Setup, and I'll hit Continue on that dialog box. I'm going to make sure my BN20 is selected here. I'm going to click on Preferences. And in here, I need to change from the A2 media size to a custom. And I'm going to make sure that this matches what I was looking at on my printer. So 18.7 and 2339. So the 2339 is there. We can hit Get from Printer, and it will bring it in for us right there. And then I can click OK and hit Print. Okay, so that's going to adjust this here. Now here's the next tricky thing, is I thought the first time I did this that this was my leading edge, that this is what's going to come out of the printer. However, this top edge up here is actually my leading edge coming out of my printer. And so I have to do this auto rotate, and then I'm going to tell it I actually need it to be upside down, which I find really weird, but I'm just going to position that so that it is up here. And I need to make sure my crop marks are visible in that preview. Okay, so something like that. And everything looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit print. I did find that this was a little bit slow of a process the first time I did it. It does seem to be getting faster. But we'll give this a chance to print, and then we'll move on to the next steps for cutting.
Okay, so you can see that I got my first cut marks, and it's going to start printing those design leaf pieces here very shortly. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and cut this off the machine. And I did roll that back, so we have about 4 inches from this crop mark to the edge of the paper. And now we have a lot of, because this was, I just loaded new material. If I had been printing, it would have printed a lot closer. So this is also wasted this time. We're gonna go over here to the vinyl cutter. And I'm going to slide this in. I'm gonna position these crop marks so that they are, let's see here, on this white line. This is that cutting strip. So it's kind of right over there. This one's underneath. So I'm gonna move it back, and then I'm gonna use these lines on the edges to kind of straighten my material. The other thing that I'm going to do is make sure that my cut or my roller marks are on these white spaces. This one's the adjuster, so I could take this over here and then use this one. So let's do that. I'm going to move this over to this section, and I'll move this roller over. Let's see. Here. And then I just want to make sure that my material is within that white, underneath that roller, like it's in line and lined up here and lined up here, so that the material is running straight through the machine. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my dots, make sure that they are again on that cutting line, and then once this is positioned, I'm going to lock the lever up here, pull this towards us, and that pushes down on these 2 rollers holding this material in place. Over here it says select sheet roll. I typically, even though this is a sheet material, I typically run it on roll, so all I'm going to do is hit enter. Now loading. It's going to go and essentially use the eye and measure the width of the material. You'll see that it tells me the width is 18.4 and my length, because it's on a roll, is not a number. Now we'll go back to the computer.
All right, now that we're back here at the computer, what we're going to do now is we're going to turn on those cut lines again by just making that layer visible in Adobe Illustrator. And we need to make sure that our cut lines are selected. So I have that selection around all of them. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on Cut, output the path to CutStudio. It's going to open up this secondary software, and it brings in our cut lines right there for us. It should be as simple as coming up here to our cut, hitting that cut, and everything looks good here, so we're going to click OK. And our preview looks pretty good down there as well. Click OK. And then we'll go back up to the vinyl cutter and take a look and see if it's doing it properly.
Okay, so we missed some of this, but the machine is going and tracking down those cut marks, or the crop marks, looking for each of those and aligning the material. And then once it says that, it's going to go through the cutting process and start cutting out our printed image. Now, before you go and cut, you could easily go in and laminate this. You would have to adjust and change some settings for the force on your cutter, but this gives you an idea of how you can use Illustrator to print and cut using 2 different pieces of equipment and that Roland GX-24. At this point, I'll just take this off the machine. And right there, I have my image.
Okay, So that was successful. We were able to get that printed. I can just close this, and I don't even need to save this file as long as I go through the same processes and I save this file over here. Now, I did think of one thing I missed in the video when I was talking about printing, and that was choosing the material. So if I go back here to print, and I have everything, you know, laid up the way I want it to be laid out, and it's upside down and everything, and I go to setup, and I'm working here in preferences to adjust to the proper width. If you go to printer adjustments, you can change this to just print there as well. And then here is your media type. So you might want to adjust that depending on what you're printing on. So I did forget that. I wanted to make sure that I said that too. All right, if you have any questions, let me know.